All right, this is Kirk Cameron. If you're unfamiliar, God, I don't even know what to say about him. He's like a far right nutcase that's like to always talk about communism and socialists coming to get you and how he needs to make this a Christian nation, all kinds of crazy stuff. He was famous for being on Growing Pains, like back in the 80s or something. He was like a child actor, and that's pretty much where he peaked, was when he was like 10 or something. Anyway, listen to what he has to say here. He went on this TV show called Flashpoint, Kenneth Copeland's TV network. Check this out.
For the last couple of years, I've been reading wholesome Christian children's books in public libraries, contra the drag queen story hours, and hearing from parents that they don't want woke indoctrination for their kids. They don't want gay dinosaurs and trans ducks teaching their children morality. They want kids' books and TV shows that are going to reinforce the stuff that parents are trying to teach their kids at home about the sanctity of life, about forgiveness, about family, about the dangers of socialism, and learning to embrace the identity God gave you. And so we want to bring to families what...
God, dude, this is crazy. Embrace the identity that God gave you. Absolutely nuts. Well, he's about to say that he wants to be the new Mr. Rogers. Here, listen.
We're considering a modernized version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Yeah, he wants to make a Mr. Rogers Neighborhood thing for Christian nutcases. Look, all that's fine, really. You want to make a show to teach kids moral values or whatever. What? Fine. Okay, great. Do it. Go nuts. Nobody is trying to indoctrinate children into like the gay lifestyle choice or whatever. I mean, he believes some real wild stuff. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in a second. But like, I don't know what he's talking about. Gay dinosaurs are teaching our children morality or whatever. Is Barney gay? For the record, there is a plan that Flashpoint and Kirk Cameron are kind of carrying out right now. And they lay out the plan pretty clearly on their TV show. This clip is from February 14th, 2023. Just listen to what these Flashpoint people have to say.
When we look back on Hitler went for the youth. The enemy always goes for the youth. We must take up arms and go for our youth.
I mean, they're kind of just laying it out there, aren't they? Like, we are the enemy. I don't know how else to interpret that. Anyway, Kirk Cameron, man, he's got like some deep issues. I think one of his biggest problems is that he is a Christian nationalist to the core. Like, that is his entire identity. And you know what? I believe in his ability to make that choice for himself, to live his life how he wants, teach his kids what he wants to teach them or whatever. That is up to you. But he doesn't want that. He wants to impose his beliefs on you. He says he wants to create Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for parents who just want to teach your kids to be moral or whatever. Actually, what he wants, as evidenced by the things that he says on a regular basis, is to get that into classrooms, to impose it on your kids, not just his kids, but yours too. We had a conversation with Charlie Kirk a while back about this. And I remember when I covered these clips, this set of clips, I couldn't play it because they hit me with a copyright strike and they tried to like take my channel down. We're going to try it again. I'm pretty confident in my ability to challenge this all the way up the chain now because I've had to do it multiple times with multiple different companies. And it's, I think I've got it down. Plus, I've got a wife that's about to be a lawyer in the next week. So anyway, listen to what Charlie Kirk and Kirk Cameron had to say here. This is, by the way, this is from February 19th, 2022.
If we could bring back the value for religious freedom, and we could...
Oh, I love it. Yes, religious freedom. I'm down. So he wants religious freedom now? That's what you're telling me?
And we could re-enshrine it and celebrate it and defend it all across this nation. What would be the positive effects that we would begin to see culturally?
Oh, I love it. I love everything about that. I want that. I'm fighting for that. I work with an organization called American Atheists and others, Freedom from Religion Foundation and a bunch of other groups that want exactly what he just described. Freedom of religion. I want you to be able to make choices for yourself without worrying about the state shoving its way in. And I want to make choices for myself without worrying about the church shoving its way into the state. That's not what he wants. If these people like Charlie Kirk and Kirk Cameron and, Kenneth Copeland and Hank Kunneman, I'm on a roll now. God, now that roll died. Well, you get the point. Like all of those people, if they just came out and said what they meant, not one person would support them. Not one. They have to lie to get any support at all. He is veiling his goals, or he's covering his goals in this veil of, I just want religious freedom, or another battle he's fighting right now. I just want parents to have rights. I just want parental rights. That's not what he wants. He wants to make it so that a small group of extremists can impose their preferred curriculum onto the school and force the teachers to teach it instead of having experts decide which things are best. Like instead of letting science teachers or scientists, just PhDs, determine which scientific subjects should be hit and at what grades, what age levels and things. Instead of having that, he wants to tell them which subjects that they can teach. Like, you should teach creationism rather than evolution. I don't want my kid to learn creationism rather than evolution. It isn't about parents' rights. It's not about my rights. It's about him imposing his beliefs on me. If he just came out and said that, not one person would support it unless they were like a full-blown nutcase. Okay, a lot of people would support it, I guess, but you get the point. So listen to how he twists this around and spins it so that people will agree with it who otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, we would see a revival, and we would see people start to put God first, which is what we need to do. We need to try to recreate a transcendent order. We need to try to recreate this idea of a properly ordered hierarchy.
Okay, so Kirk Cameron comes in and says, I want religious freedom. How would society benefit if we had religious freedom? And Charlie Kirk says, you're absolutely right. We need to create an ordered hierarchy centered around God. Okay, well, that's not religious freedom. That is you imposing your religious beliefs on the people around you. That is the exact opposite of religious freedom. Religious freedom is not a religious state. Do they understand the difference? Do you think that there's religious freedom in Saudi Arabia? There's religion, but there is not religious freedom. You are not free to be whatever religion you want. You're not free to criticize religion or whatever. The point is that these people are trading out terms, pretending to stand for a belief when they stand for the exact opposite of their belief. Because if they say this enough, they know they'll get support for it.
Ordered hierarchy.
Charlie, why should non-religious people care about religious freedom?
Oh, I absolutely do. I do. I care about that very much. I want you to be allowed to practice your religion how you want. Again, that's not what he's trying to do.
Care about religious freedom. If they say, not my issue, you deal with it. Why are they making a big mistake?
Yeah, they're wrong because the church is all that is preventing totalitarianism from setting in.
Exactly.
We're enjoying the surpluses of the fruit of the American system. The church and religious freedom is what keeps this entire society ordered together.
Okay, so he says religious freedom, which is a concept. Let's just try to define it here. Religious freedom is a concept, is the idea that anybody can be any religion that they want, or no religion at all. There is no overarching, unified religious group that controls things. If there was a religious group that controlled things, we wouldn't have religious freedom. So he's saying we don't have a totalitarian system because we have a totalitarian system. He's saying the reason that we aren't in a dictatorship is because we have, or he wants to have, a dictatorship control everything from the top down. Are you serious right now?
This entire society ordered together. You're starting to see this
He says it keeps the entire society ordered together. Are you serious? Really? You're literally describing a totalitarian system.
Ordered together. You're starting to see this disintegrate. Even secular people that I know, they don't want to live in secular places.
Okay, he doesn't know any secular people, but I don't know what you're talking about. I'm secular. I love living in New York City. It's the I love this place to death.
They don't want to live in secular places anymore. Do you notice that?
Right.
Secular people I know don't want to live in New York anymore.
Okay, they don't know any secular people. And Kirk Cameron sitting here, like, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Like, you know any secular people. Who the f*** do you know that's secular? One name. Give me one name. He's so full of
They don't want to live in LA anymore. They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Texas. I wonder why you're going to Texas. Is it that because they've actually honored religious liberty and freedom for...
But they haven't. Texas has absolutely not respected religious liberty and or freedom. They've done the exact opposite. They've tried to impose a religious structure on the people in the state.
Honored religious liberty and freedom for longer. Oh, I want to go to Arizona. I wonder why. Why aren't you moving to Portland?
Well, I mean, people are moving to Portland. What are you talking about? There are a ton of people that move to Portland every year.
Like, why aren't you moving to Seattle?
Right.
So even the secular types, they themselves admit that cities and areas that have had more of a reverence for God and for tradition and for order and for the church are actually nicer places to live, Kirk.
Like, am I going fucking crazy here? What's happening? Is it me? Am I the idiot? I don't understand. What are they talking about? People move to Seattle and Oregon and California and New York City all the time. These are like the most desired places to live. That's why they're so expensive, because everyone wants to be there. You think if New York City cost like $500 a month to live there in like a 3-bedroom apartment, people just wouldn't go there because they're disgusted with it? Oh, New York City, it's awful. Oh, there are so many liberals there. I don't want to be there. Yeah, right. He knows better. He's so full of shit. Charlie Kirk lives in his own little world, as Miracle says, 100%. You know, and this brings me back to the question, like, are they suckers or scam artists? Are they the scumbags, or are they being taken for fools? In my personal opinion, I think both Charlie Kirk and Kirk Cameron are scam artists. Ben Shapiro supposedly got a really high score on his LSAT, like the highest you can get. You know, the entry test to get into law school. Ben Shapiro got through law school. I watched that happen with my wife, and that's brutal. Oh my God. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He understands political theory and all kinds of stuff. He took critical race theory classes. I watched my wife go through these critical classes. They're intense. He knows better. Ben Shapiro does. Kirk Cameron knows better. Charlie Kirk knows better. They are the scam artists, in my opinion.
So I think, man, if you've got a freaky flag to fly, America's the place to fly it.
Oh, like the LGBT flag? Is that the kind of flag he's talking about in his head? Freaky flag, quote unquote. It's a great place to fly the LGBT flag. Suddenly, he's all for that. In reality, he's not. He knows he's talking to an audience in the American people that, by and large, stand for the concept of religious freedom, because that's kind of, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. Those are the things that the country's built on, the values. Even though they're not values that are actually maintained and actually loved, they get lip service. Those values do. People say, yeah, I want those things. He knows he's talking about, he knows he's talking to people who think that those are good things at its face. So he wants to pretend that he stands for it when he doesn't. He hates gay people. Kirk Cameron does. Charlie Kirk, they hate gay people. So I don't want to hear any of this nonsense about flying a freaky flag or whatever. Yeah, how would he feel if Muslims flew like an Islamic flag or whatever? I don't know, on the 4th of July or on one of their holidays or something. How would he feel about that? He would feel insulted. Like it was a slight against him personally.
Flag to fly, America's the place to fly it. Try to go fly that flag in another country in the Middle East.
Oh, so you understand that religious freedom is important, actually. Not pretend religious freedom where your religion is free, but nobody else's is, but real religious freedom.
It's not going to go so well for you, yet we're advocating for similar kinds of government, ultimate totalitarian rule that is going to make this country like those places.
So, again, he's saying things, he's viewing this from the perspective of LGBT people have a religion that they're trying to force on Kirk Cameron, and he, this innocent little Christian who's just sitting here doing his thing and can't be left alone by the woke mob, won't let him fly his Christian flag. And the woke LGBTists are trying to force the U.S. to have one religion, the LGBT religion. That's how he's framing it in his head. When he's literally like, he's not taking his own advice. Anyway, these people are just jokes, bro. They are complete jokes of human beings. Yeah, check this one out. This is from the same conversation.
This idea of the separation of church and state still seems to come up. Even though it's not in the Constitution, it's not in the Bill of Rights, there's a principle there that people...
Wow, that's interesting. Suddenly, he's trying to shoot down the idea that this is a country that stands for religious freedom. How about that? Actually, it is in the Constitution. I don't know why they keep saying this. I guess they think if they say separation of church and state isn't in the Constitution, if they think if they say that enough, then they're going to gaslight everybody into believing it. That's not true. It is in the first sentence of the First Amendment of the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. No, respecting, what is it? I should really memorize this. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Oh, I was right. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. There it is. That's the Establishment Clause, also known as separation of church and state. That's the concept linked to that. Thomas Jefferson even expanded upon that. You know, today we have a system where the judicial branch dissects every part of the Constitution. Like the Supreme Court, their job is to break down the words in the Constitution, understand what the meaning is, what was intended, and if what's happening applies to it or what. That's why the Supreme Court exists. Thomas Jefferson, we don't have to do that with the First Amendment of the Constitution because Thomas Jefferson just explained it for us. And then it was adjudicated by the Supreme Court afterward. So this is all completely established, rock-solid information. When it says that, Thomas Jefferson explained that he didn't want church and state involved with each other at all. He wrote some letters with Danbury Baptist Church, who was very unhappy with the state of Connecticut because a Calvinist denomination had declared themselves the state church in Connecticut in clear violation of the Constitution. So Danbury Baptist writes to Thomas Jefferson and says, "The hell's happening?" Jefferson says, this is in the late 1700s, I think. Jefferson says, "I totally agree with you. I don't want that either." Goes completely contrary to what the Constitution says or what was intended when we wrote it or whatever. Just sit on this and we'll work it out. Eventually, it went to the Supreme Court, I believe while Jefferson was the president, which was the early 1800s. And it was adjudicated by the Supreme Court and decided that the concept of separation of church and state as laid out by Jefferson in his letters to Danbury Baptist Church is the correct interpretation of the Establishment Clause. That is what it means, and that is what was intended. I mean, this is within like 10 years or so of it being written in the first place. Late 1700s, early 1800s. So, yeah, you're just wrong. Separation of church and state is in the Constitution, just like gun rights are in the Constitution. I can just as easily say gun rights aren't in there because the words gun and rights are not next to each other in the Second Amendment. It's very clearly what the Second Amendment is about, though, right? The Establishment Clause is about separation of church and state in the same way. So you want to say separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. I say gun rights is not in the Constitution.
State still seems to come up. Even though it's not in the Constitution, it's not in the Bill of Rights, there's a principle there that people get entirely backwards and upside down thinking that that is the reason why we shouldn't talk about God or faith in the government. Is that true?
No, I mean, it's in a...
Wait, I'm sorry. We shouldn't talk about God or faith in the government. I mean, I don't have a problem with government leaders being Christian. That's fine. I mean, I'm okay with Raphael Warnock being a pastor. Isn't he the pastor of Martin Luther King Jr.'s old church in Georgia or something? I'm A-okay with that. Could not possibly care less. The problem is when you are trying to establish your religion as more important than other religions in the United States, giving it special privileges. I'm not talking about a denomination. I'm talking about a religion, Christianity. You're giving it special privileges in the United States. That is what's happening.
Is that true?
No, I mean, it's in a single letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Convention.
Okay, well, it's not a single letter, but all right.
It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration.
Yes, it is. I don't like you can't gaslight us like this. It just is.
It's not in the Bill of Rights. It's not in the...
It's in the Bill of Rights, which is the Constitution. So yeah, it's not in the Declaration of Independence. I don't know why I even mentioned that.
It's not in the Federalist Papers. It's not in any of those foundational documents.
Yes, it is.
That really formed this republic that we have. It was adopted by the Warren Burger Court in the 1960s and 70s.
No, it was the early 1800s. Don't know what you're talking about.
As a reason to get prayer out of schools.
Bullshit.
But let's pretend they were right, Kirk. Let's pretend that they were right for a second, even though they're not.
Dude, how do you up the name of somebody who you share a name with like that? Okay, whatever. I'm not going to split hairs.
Prayer out of schools. But let's pretend they were right, Kirk. Let's pretend that they were right for a second, even though they're not. Then why don't they keep the state out of the church? Why don't they keep the public health officials?
Yeah, I love it. Keep the two separate. 100%. Absolutely. But what he's about to do is complain that he has to live by the same standards as everybody else. You're not exempted from societal rules because you are a part of a church. That's what he's going to complain about. This is 2022. He's complaining about COVID. He's complaining about the fact that churches, not that they weren't allowed to hold services. They were. At no point in time were churches prevented from holding services. He's complaining that churches either had to space their chairs out and take temperatures at the door, or hold services outside, or hold them on Zoom. He's upset that they had to do literally anything in the name of public health. And what's the penalty if they don't do those things, literally anything? It was a fine at best, a slap on the wrist. I don't think anybody even faced any penalties for it. I mean, there's that one dude, Tony Spell, who was arrested. That pastor was arrested. He wasn't arrested for holding church services. He was arrested for trying to run somebody over with his truck. I'm sorry. Look, I have to take a step back. Now that I told you he was arrested, give me a second here. Yeah, Tony Spell is kind of the face of all of this at the time. He's being arrested for holding church services or whatever. That's not what happened. There was a protester outside of his church, and on multiple occasions, he tried to run the person over. First with his truck, and then with a church bus.
He just pulled as far over under the shoulder as he could without hitting me. He was maybe 6 inches away. So, and that happened nearly instantaneously. It was just suddenly there's a guy driving 45 miles an hour a few inches from you.
And then there's this one. I don't know if you guys have ever driven a bus before. You cannot see what's behind you. You can't. It's too big. Like, you can see what's beside of you sometimes. If a car is behind you, you're going to run into it. That's just what it is, and you have to account for that.
Then he stopped and started backing up at me. By the time it was actually close enough to hit me, I was just kind of in shock. I don't think the pastor could see me anymore. So
there's no way you could see him.
So I don't think it was necessarily intent to not hit me.
Nah, absolutely not. And the courts agreed, and they arrested his ass. Right here. I'm gonna play it at double speed. Yeah, they arrested him. He's walking to the church with his Bible. He sees cops. Whoop, whoop. Oh, okay, we're turning around, walking the other way, walking away from the cops. Don't touch me. Cop walking up to him. Don't touch me. And then he grabs him, puts handcuffs on him, and he really wanted this imagery, Tony Spell did, of him holding his Bible while he's arrested, and his church leaders taking the Bible for him and all that. It wasn't because of COVID or whatever. It was because he's a scumbag. Anyway, Charlie Kirk is desperate to twist this into pastors arrested for holding church service. It's nonsense.
Not. Then why don't they keep the state out of the church? Why don't they keep the public health officials from going into churches and locking them down? I thought they want separation of church and state.
I do. That did not happen. This is like fictitious. This is in your head. This is like people who complain about chest feeding rather than breastfeeding, or people calling children babies instead of babies. This is not real, okay? This is not happening. Literally not one person, not one human being in the United States is trying to normalize the word babies instead of babies, or chest feeding instead of breastfeeding. Not one.
They can't even be consistent with their own lies.
Right.
Even if they were right, Kirk, this last year with the lockdowns, no church would have been forced to close.
No church was forced to close. Not one. They could have held services outside. They could have spaced their chairs out. They could have held them on Zoom. And honestly, they held them anyway. This wasn't even enforced.
No church would be facing fines like Mike McClure.
Oh, God, they're just perpetual victims, dude. He's going to pick out one example. Like, who is this guy? Does this even really happen, or is he just making this up?
At Calvary Chapel, San Jose.
Yeah.
Calvary Chapel. Wait a minute now. I know that one. That's Jack Hibbs' church, isn't it? Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. Yep. That's Jack Hibbs' church. He's a televangelist, right-wing nutcase. Mega church, gigantic, tens of thousands of people. I don't know what he's talking about, if this is real or what happened or whatever, but no churches were forced to shut down, okay?
In fact, they've never believed that. The only thing they believed is that the state can do whatever you want. The church should not try to influence the state.
No. Church and state should stay separate, but churches are bound to societal rules. You know, I believe in personal freedom to the absolute maximum degree, as much personal freedom as I can possibly grant to others. I want everybody to have that personal freedom, those rights to do whatever they want, as long as they're not affecting anybody else, or as long as they're not affecting themselves adversely. Like drug addiction shouldn't be criminalized, but it should be a legal issue where the state is trying to find ways to help, trying to make it better. You know, there are a lot. Anyway, that's a totally separate subject. I'll talk about that another time, but your right to swing your fist ends right here where my nose is. When you swing your fist right here at my nose, you're no longer exercising your rights. You are violating my rights. Your rights end where my rights begin. That's what this country is based off of. Those are the core concepts to the United States. But there is a line. There is a point at which societal good outweighs individual rights. For example, an HIV positive person has the right to sleep around with as many people as they want. Everybody does. You can sleep with whoever you want. That is not regulated, and it shouldn't be. You should be allowed to live your life and do what you want, right? That's personal freedom. But an HIV patient comes in, and they don't tell the person that they're sleeping with that they're HIV positive, and they're acting as a disease vector and, you know, ending countless lives prematurely or putting a massive strain on the medical system because they want to for no other reason. There has to be a line there, right? We have to have legal consequences for somebody intentionally setting out to hurt society by acting as a vector of illness or something. That's one situation in which societal safety usurps personal freedom. There are actually a lot of situations like that, and Charlie Kirk and Kirk Cameron and every other person out here, I'd be willing to bet they all agree with me on all of those. It's just this one thing where COVID is killing literally millions of people, and the government says you have to take some precautions. Not that you're not allowed to meet, not that you're going to be put in jail if you attend church or any of that. Simply that you have to hold services outside, online, or space the chairs out by 6 feet. Those are the only rules. They say that, and you can't even follow that. You can't even follow these basic safety guidelines for society. That's on you. You are being the shithead in this situation. The state is not overstepping. We're trying to protect society from a mass pandemic causing mass deaths, where people are being thrown into mass graves because there are so many dead bodies. Literally not enough freezers to store all of the dead bodies. And you're stupid. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that guy. And you fine gentlemen refuse to take the most basic safety steps. Not stop going to church. Just take precautions when you go. They are perpetual victims.
This is rubbish. The founding fathers always believed that Christians deserved to be counselors to the king. Not deserved. They needed to be counselors to the king.
Really? Is that why they wrote into the Constitution or into the Bill of Rights that there will be a separation between church and state, that the two shouldn't mix, that we have a secular government? You know, the United States is the first example in world history of a secular government on this scale. All throughout European history, at the very least, state churches, the concept of state churches, have been built into the whole system. Like in Germany, for example. Talking about that a lot because I wrote about it not too long ago. Was Hitler an atheist? Amazon Audible, check it out. Anyway, in Germany, there was no separation of church and state. The concept did not exist. A church was not legitimate unless it had control of the state. Churches controlled entire districts. There were 28 church districts in Germany in the 1930s, for example. The Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, actually controlled the Germanic region for a long time. Then Martin Luther comes along and he complains that Catholic priests are basically taking money to pray people into heaven and out of hell. It's just stupid. Anyway, he complained about that. There's a massive split. Protestant Reformation happens. The Protestant faiths are born, and the Roman Catholic Church lost its grip on the state, leading to the Peace of Augsburg Treaty. No. What's it called? Well, anyway, the Augsburg Treaty of 1555. I don't remember the exact name for it, which basically allowed Protestant churches to take control. It was whichever church the leader was from is the church that would control the Germanic states. 1555, clear through World War I and World War II. The United States is a secular government, and it's the first of its kind, and that is the reason why we also have the longest surviving unchanged Constitution. Well, that's right, isn't it? Is the U.S. Constitution the longest lasting? Yeah, longest lasting written national constitution in the world. Although it's been amended, of course, but yeah. That's why. Separation of church and state. Because people are not trying to force their beliefs on others.
The people whispering in the ear of the leaders, counseling them, do this and don't do that. The church has abdicated its moral place to be counseling the king or counseling the political leaders in our country, and we see the result of that.
We do? What results are you seeing? Just a joke. These people are jokes. Anyway, tell me what you think about this in the comments. I cannot see a situation in which Kirk Cameron becomes the Christian nationalist Mr. Rogers. We'll see. But either way, I'm disturbed by like his whole belief system either way. Let me know what you think in the comments.